Priya, I was just thinking that, like one of the common problems that a lot of executives and professionals faces that they are working in a team where the boss is probably a micromanager, if I may say. Uh, so, what would you advise someone whose manager micromanages their work, leading to frustration and a lack of autonomy? But they are also unable to, rise over it and, deliver their best.
Hmm. Hmm. I this is quite I think it's an evergreen issue.
Yeah,
Micromanagement comes as an evergreen issue, and one thing that we need to clarify is rather than looking at it as an evergreen issue, I mean this challenge exists in across all organizations, and what's really um, the background, or how should one tackle this is a good way to perhaps think. And the first thing that anybody who sees or is part of a environment where there is a lot of micromanagement, I mean, we all know the first thing is about age old thing about having an open communication.
right,
But what happens is when you have this approach of an open communication with your manager, it needs to be done with a lot of tact and emotional maturity.
right,
Times when this is done, there is a sense of confrontation, or there is a sense of assertiveness in the guise of, we say it is assertiveness, but sometimes it's viewed as aggression,
right,
right? And so there is a zero sum outcome there. So when
right,
you handle it with tact and emotional maturity, there are two things you would be doing. So first is to find out from the manager to say, hey, is there a you're taking a certain position, which is to manage, use a micromanage, you're managing me quite like really at the back on every turns and every corners. What's the belief behind this approach?
yeah,
So the first thing is to get that clarified from the manager. The second is there's a concept called role history. So in organizations, every role has a history.
mm,
So perhaps this particular job or this particular role required somebody to be really guiding, or you had somebody in the past where there was micromanagement was essential, and but perhaps the person must have moved on, and many people would have come in and moved out, and you're there today, but the style is, but the history of how that role was managed is still existing.
right,
You need to clarify the position the person is taking first with a little bit of emotional maturity and tact. And that's why I call this a little generative empathy is
yeah,
required there, rather than just plain vanilla assertiveness, or just, some plain vanilla approaches, which is just a confrontational approach, etc. The
right,
second one is to, once you have this, it's also important while you get to understand this, it's also important to share some aspects or clarify and set some guidelines between you and your manager quite at any instant, at such an instance, it's a great opportunity to reevaluate and recalibrate. So the
right,
first thing is to say, how would you like to be managed? And openly share that with the manager. Now, and you can say what has worked for you in your best role, and how have you delivered results, like when would you like feedback to be provided, when
right,
do you think that you would like to get back to the manager when you're stuck, so you have a certain style yourself to say, hey, I want to give it some try before I come to go back to the manager. So have an open communication once again about feedback, about weekly accountables and deliverables, so
right,
that there is some level of clarity and you are earning your freedom. But definitely you're not going to, things are not just going to change overnight. Anything has to be earned. So once
yeah,
you
yeah,
have these guidelines and norms that are set up between you and your manager, start showcasing results so that you earn the right for the manager to start taking off the lens. And then there is a greater communion between two individuals or two teams that are working together, right? So these are some thoughts coming to mind, especially with this evergreen issue of micromanagement always coming in the way, and perhaps handling it with a little bit or more of generative dimensions can be a solution rather than using the traditional dimensions.
Right, right, right. Great answer, Priya.